And welcome to Counsel of the Day with Shanrae. And I am Shanrae. Good evening and welcome to week 2 of exposure. I'll be talking about different subtopics this month. Last week we broke down exposure within the family. Everyone experienced it. This week we're going to be talking. The subtopic is violence exposure and the family. So before we get started, because this is a 30-minute segment, this is an open forum. So if you have any questions that you want to ask, I will stop and address them. If you are, good evening, Miss Barbara. Good evening, Cole. Good evening, Romy. Yes, it's really live, Cole. It's really live. And if you have any experiences, like life experiences, and if you feel comfortable to share, I will pause and then we will get on and we will talk about that. We will expound on that. So, without further ado, and I say good evening, Corey. How are you over in YouTube? Good evening. Good evening. All right, so let's get started. I am a degree counselor, and I'm going to open this up just a little bit. I am a degree counselor. All right, and let me give you my bio because a lot of people want to know what qualifies me to talk about certain strategies on certain topics. So my bio is I am a degree counselor. I'm going to blow this up just a little bit more. Excuse me. All right. So let me do it this way. I'm a degree counselor who acquired my dual a bachelor's of science degree in psychology and organizational management from Ashford University. My great passion is bringing healing to people who have been through a traumatic or a stressful experience. And so when human beings experience trauma or traumatic or severe life stresses, it is not uncommon for them for their lives to kind of unravel. So I help clients who include children, adults, and families to find healthy strategies and healthy assumptions of themselves and to strengthen their relationships so that they can know themselves as peaceful, complete, whole, and safe. All right. So I am a Christian counselor as well. But before I get started, let me read my website disclaimer. Please be aware that due to the nature of the technology that I'm using, there can be no assurance of confidentiality when using this online service. It should also be noted that due to changes in policies that all replies are to be used as advisory and informational only and will not constitute an official determination. Information provided by me or other counselors or counseling services are subject to the limitations of current and available material, but the final responsibility for successfully achieving a goal rests with you, the individual. Information online is designed to be helpful. However, this information does change frequently, and it is recommended that you, the individual, will consult with another physician, another specialist, and or religious leader to aid you in your overall behavioral wellness. All right, we're going to delve right in. I am a Christian counselor, so my scripture for the month is coming from the amplified version of Luke chapter 12, verse 48. And it says, for everyone to whom much is given of him shall much be required. The old terminology is to whom much is given, much is required. Okay, so let's go on to our definitions. I am a definition person. And we are talking about exposure and the family. The definition, oh, my PowerPoint on here is a little jumbled. It was fine when I did it, but please excuse the typos. So the definitions, number one for exposure, I chose was the state of being exposed to contact with something, not just someone, but with something. Number two, family. I chose this for family. It says a group of one or more parents and their children living together as a unit. All right. So we're going to move this along, and let me open this up just a little bit. Tonight's key, let me go back. Tonight's key points, I'm going to be talking about the breakdown of violence, exposure, family life, 4 types of family life, the effects of being exposed to violence, 7 ways to heal from violence, and then of course the takeaway, and then I said a quote here. I probably won't have time for the quote this evening though. So let's move this along just a little bit, because 30 minutes comes and it goes so fast. Again, if you have any questions, feel free. Feel free. Cole said that's a word, pun intended. You know what, Cole? I said I needed to inbox you and tell you. Today on the reel with like Lonnie Love and all of them, they were talking about uh, stressful laughter. And so it was one of the, I don't know which one, I don't know if it was Gabrielle or if it was Israel's wife, but they were saying that they were at a funeral. One of them was at a funeral and they could not stop laughing. And they were saying that they was just nervous. They were so nervous, and they don't know that's what they do when they are in an uncomfortable situation. Their first reaction is to laugh. And they had also the guest Candy from the group, you know, whatever, Candy Burrs. And she says she does the same thing. She has a nervous laugh. So whenever something serious or, stressful happens, she just automatically results to laughing. And so I said, oh, I wanted to tell Cole about that. All right. So let's move this along. Let's go on and let's talk a little bit about family life. Most religions consider family life being a blessing and value the stability of marriage. So Christians believe the church should be a model of family life. So what are the 4 types of family? Number one, there's the nuclear family. What does Cole say? Cole say, that's me. That's why I said I need to inbox Cole and tell him about this. Exactly. Number one, the nuclear family is a family unit consisting of 2 adults and any number of children that are living together under the same roof with them. Number 2 is the extended family. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, either all are living nearby or within the same household. They call it the reconstituted family, also known as a step family as well. So the reconstituted family, number 3, is also known as a step family or a blended family. A single parent family. That's what I grew up in. I grew up in a single parent home. It's just my mom and me and my 2 sisters. That's what I grew up in. Consists of a parent not living with a partner. My father passed when I was young, so my mom was a young widow. Who has most of the day-to-day responsibilities for raising their children. The children will live with this single parent for the majority of their time, but they may still have contact with their other parent depending on the situation. That's the single parent family. And then number 4 is the same-sex family. The same-sex family, since civil partnerships were legalized in 2005, the number of same-sex families has been growing. So same-sex marriage was legalized in 2014. I don't know, a lot of y'all remember that. Same-sex couples cannot conceive together, though. So their children may be adopted or be the biological children of one member of the couple. And they may also be from a sperm donor or a surrogate birth mom. Okay, so these are the 4. I said 4, but they're 5. Excuse me. They merged together to reconstruct the family with the extended family. So there's a nucleus family, Then they have the extended family, they have the reconstructed family, the single parent family. Like again, I said I grew up in a single parent family, and same sex family. All right, so let's move this along about violence exposure, and I'm going to continue to look down and look up. Because if y'all have any questions, any scenarios, we're going to pause and we're going to highlight those. Good evening, Tawana. All right. So last week we broke it down. We broke down the family culture along with exposure therapy. So tonight we're going to talk about the family that is exposed to violence, abuse, etc. And if you were born in a family without that, that is a blessing, because this is a worldwide epidemic, not just the USA, not just a down south thing. This is a worldwide epidemic. So what is exposure to violence? Okay. Exposure to violence is witnessing being affected by or being aware of domestic and community violence, and or experiencing violence through child abuse and neglect, or in a violent incident in the home or community. I grew up, and I'm an open book. I always talk about my life. I grew up in a very rough place in New York City called Far Rockaway, Queens, New York. A lot of people, if you live in New York, then you're aware of Far Rockaway, Queens. But most people who don't live in New York, most people are not aware of the little small town, little island of Far Rockaway, New York. And because we were surrounded by water, we had the beach in front of us and the bay behind us. One way it was, you can come in one way and leave out the other, but it was a long strip, Beach Channel Drive. On the end where I lived, Edgemere, in the Edgemere projects, it was very, very violent. I grew up seeing a lot of violence in my community due to a lot of people being poor and uneducated. And then at the time, crack was something big. So the rich people, politicians, whoever, they started busting in crack into our community, and a lot of people started selling the drugs, and a lot of people started using the drugs. Tawana Washington is on here. We're both from Far Rockaway. She can tell you, give you a thumbs up about what I'm talking about. Because we both experienced the same type of violence in our community. So this is not just for violence in the home. It says again, exposure to violence, witnessing violence growing up even in your community, it affects you. How common is exposure to violence at home? Now we're going to switch because we're going to break it down a little bit. So overall, more than 1/4 of children surveyed, 25.3%, have witnessed violence in their homes, schools, and communities during this past year alone. And more than 1/3, which is 37.8%, have witnessed violence against another person during their lifetime. Again, that's something that I'm not proud of, but I am one of the percentage that have witnessed a lot of violence growing up in the community that I grew up in. And that pushed me to move out of New York. And when my husband and I married and we had our family, I wanted to be far away from that type of city life and more in a suburban life, because we didn't want our children. Well, my husband grew up in the suburbs, so he don't have the same experience as me, thank God. But I always desired for they're our grown folk, but our children to experience a better childhood, and I was blessed to be able to be married, and it's two of us. My husband and I are a nuclear family, and so we were able to provide this for our grown folk. But that was the fuel, though, because of how I was raised, where I was raised, not how, but where, I was raised. All right, so let's move on to what are some negative emotional and cognitive effects that can occur in a child that's exposed to violence at an early age. All right, so I'm going to open this up a little bit so you all can see this. All right, and let me move this back. So symptoms of trauma and psychopathology is what it's called. Cole, it's okay, because I'm telling you, a lot of stuff makes us it gives us that drive to want to be successful and to want something better, if we can help it. So descriptions of infants that are exposed to IPV include eating problems. IPV is oh my God, what is the name? It just slipped my mind, but it'll come back to me. But symptoms of exposure to violence and is eating problems, sleep disturbances, and mood disturbances. All right, and this is Dr. Laser. And he did a study on this back in 1986. And hey, cousin Leisha, he did a study on this back in 1986. This is Dr. Laser, and this is the symptoms that he found, which are descriptions of infants that have experienced, violence, exposed to violence. So clinical studies find poor sleeping habits, poorer general health, higher irritability, and increased screaming and crying. Also, Doctors Alessi and Dr. Hearn went back and did a more up-to-date study in 2007, and found the same exact findings with children that are exposed to violence. All right. So, what are other factors? Let me change this out. What are some other factors? Exposure to violence as a child influence the amount of violence that is seen in society. They want to know other symptoms. So children that are living with violence typically experience other stressors too, such as poverty, neglect, poor nutrition, overcrowding, substance abuse, lack of adequate medical care, parents who are unemployed, parents psychopathology. So these factors can exacerbate and extend these negative effects of violence exposure in children. Again, the studies correlated. Again, children not only have eating problems, sleep disturbances, and mood disturbances, but poverty, neglect, poor nutrition, overcrowding, substance abuse, lack of adequate medical care, parents who are unemployed, and parents' psychopathology all play a role in the child, the effects of a child that's been exposed to violence. Let me move this along. All right. So, how does violence affect children's mental health? Okay. Children who witness or are victims of emotional, physical, or sexual abuse are at a higher risk for health problems as adults. So these can include mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. And right now, with people that are coming out, and I'm so proud of people who are sharing. They're not afraid to share what they're experiencing, because with them sharing, that means that they want some strategies. They want some help. Miss Barbara said, "Oh, good. That's okay, Miss Barbara. We glad to have you on tonight." I love how people now are not ashamed and not afraid to speak up about if they're experiencing depression, if they're experiencing any anxiety, because with them speaking up and saying something, that's the first step to getting help and learning strategies to learn how to overcome this. So again, they're saying that these children who witness this type of violence, they grow up a lot of times with depression and anxiety, some forms of that. They may also include diabetes, wow, obesity, heart disease, poor self-esteem, and other problems. So violence has a severe, and because Alicia said that is true. That is true. All right. And a lot of you I know a lot of you may have witnessed some of this. Let me give you an example. Y'all know I'm a movie buff. So the movie Bridesmaids came on TV Sunday or Saturday night. And I've seen it so many times, but I like to watch it because it's comical. And so one of the main ladies, or it was two main ladies. They were best friends. One was getting married, and the other one was not. The one that was not getting married, the best friend, she made so much trouble, all the way leading up to her best friend's wedding. And everything she did, she was very dysfunctional. Everything she did, it was always someone else's fault. I mean, and then her friend confronted her at the bridal shower and said, "Why don't you just act like you're happy for me when you're in front of me, and then when you leave, go and talk about me. Go to," and I'm adding, "like a dog. Go talk about me like a normal person would do." But unfortunately, her friend, she would act out a lot of, it made it seem like it was innocent, but it really was not. A lot of things she did was done in a selfish, self-absorbed type of way. They went out to eat when they was going to get the bridesmaids gowns, and she took them to a restaurant that she can afford, where they served bad meat, and all of them got food poisoning. They were trying to go on where the bridesmaids go on the trip, before the wedding. And so everybody voted to go to Las Vegas. She wanted to go to her best friend's cabin, family cabin. Everybody voted. She couldn't afford to be in first class with everybody else. She had made such a ruckus on the plane until they never made Vegas. They got kicked off. The plane did an emergency landing. They kicked them off. And she still, the young lady still never ever. She just would not acknowledge that she was the problem. Turns out she came from a divorce type of situation. I'm assuming she never got counseling about it. So her relationships, every relationship she had, she was basically, in layman's terms, she was a booty call to her friend. He said she was his number three. So her relationships were tragic and terrible. And then when it was one police officer that was very interested in her, she about chased him away. He was a good guy, but because she was so, in her mind, so accustomed to tragedy and this, that, and she couldn't even accept someone good into her life. So this is one of the things that they're talking about. Okay, so violence again has a severe and wide-ranging impact on children's mental health. That's why I said that. Mental health, including behavioral and emotional disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, impairments to cognitive function, poor academic achievement, and antisocial behaviors, clinical depression, anxiety, and self-harm behaviors, including suicide. We've been seeing a lot of that these last, good evening, Renee. We've been seeing a lot of this with suicides with these young people these last few years. And people are trying to understand why. But it's something that has happened to them in their former years, growing up, that really just they couldn't shake it. And I'm so sorry to hear that, because life is worth living. And I'm a strong advocate that yes, you can overcome anything. There are going to be steps. I'm not going to tell you when you're going to overcome it. But what I'm saying is, I strongly believe, as a counselor, degree counselor, and also a Christian, I believe that anyone can overcome any tragedy. All right, so let's move on to, does exposure to violence lead to violent behavior? Okay, all right. So exposure to violence has been consistently linked to antisocial behavior amongst youth or young people. For example, violence victimization was found to be the single best predictor of juvenile violent behaviors for both boys and girls in a nationally representative sample of adolescents. This study was done by psychologists Bloom, Ireland, and Bloom, and this was done in 2003. So, how does exposure to violence lead to demotivation? Demotivation. All right. A study on 1,116 twins found that childhood exposure to violence was related to a decreased IQ compared to unexposed children, and the severity and number of violent episodes exposed to at home were associated with a greater decrease in IQ. Now, I'm not only a degree counselor. My degrees supported me becoming a special education teacher. So I witnessed a lot because we have to write bits and we have to do a lot of different things. We have to write in their files for each child so we can find out the strategies that works best for the children. What I've learned, and they're saying decreased IQ. I want to try to open this up as much as I can, as quickly as I can. The reason why they found decreased IQs in these children up under specific stress is because these children, with everything that they've been exposed to, whether it's in the home or in the community, it is very hard for a child to go to school and be able to concentrate on learning when there's something, maybe they're malnutrition, maybe there is some abuse that may be happening in the home, or maybe they're being bullied. It's a lot of different factors. And so a lot of times when I was teaching, because I'm retired, I'm medically retired now, when I was teaching, we had to be more of a parent, more of a counselor to each of our students to kind of crack that core, to so they can feel safe amongst us. And that took a process, helping these. And I taught middle school. So it took some time to get our students to trust us. And when they started trusting us, then we started seeing better, more success when it came to you know, uh, their academic structure in their life. But it takes a process. So this is why they're trying to say that it's a decreased IQ. It may come across as a decreased IQ when it comes to taking tests, and even when a lot of these students act out in the class behaviorally. But again, a lot of it has to do with what they're exposed to, either in their communities or in their homes. And again, you think about something that's happening to you. Let's talk about a marriage. Let's talk about a marriage, for instance. If your marriage is failing, and whatever's going on in your home, as an adult, a lot of times people may not even realize that their mannerisms are not the best wherever they go. I was in a situation with a long time friend, and I hadn't seen the person in a while. And so saw them after a good while. So glad to see them. How are you? How you doing? And their mannerism was it was a turn off. It was a turn off. I was very surprised, but I understood there was a root cause to this. The person was probably experiencing something on their job or in their home, and their demeanor, they're just taking it, not being very pleasant to anyone that encounters them. And this was an adult, someone that I've known for well over 20 years. And so I didn't take it to heart, because I do understand that there's something that's happening in that person's life that to cause them to be so shut up, shut off, turned off, or anything like that. And that's what happens. So if this happens with adults, can you imagine what happens with children? You will never be able to get 100% effort from someone that is experiencing some type of trauma or violence. All right, so let's move on to our remedy and our strategy, because our 30 minutes are almost up. All right, I'm going to blow this up just a little bit so you can see it a little better, and then I'm going to close it out. All right, here are 7 ways to heal your childhood trauma. All right, so let's talk about number one. Number one says let's acknowledge and recognize the trauma for what it is. No, let's not sugarcoat it. It never helps sugarcoating anything. You have to acknowledge and recognize what's really happening. Number two, reclaiming control. A great psychologist or therapist was going to give strategies on how to reclaim control as much as you can within your environment. Again, we're talking about healing from childhood trauma now. Number three says seek support and don't isolate yourself. Do not isolate yourself. Seek support. Number four says take care of your health. It's easy to neglect you when you're kind of in a fog or in a funk. but please don't do that. Take care of your health. Number 5 says, learn the true meaning of acceptance and letting go. So learn the true meaning of number 1, accepting things, and number 2, letting go of some things. Okay. All right. Number 6 says, you'll get strategies to learn how to replace bad habits with good ones. Number 7, be patient with yourself. You got to be patient with yourself. Okay. So let's move this along. I wanted to open this up because I talked about this last week. Okay, and it says what is the best therapy for childhood trauma? It's called cognitive processing therapy. So CPT is a subtype of cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, and let me open this just a little bit. Cognitive behavioral therapy, it entails homework, strategies, doing hands-on-hand things. That's what that is. Okay, so cognitive processing therapy is often the first choice when treating PTSD, especially when addressing the long-term effects of childhood traumas in adults. The American Psychiatric Association, or the APA, recommends treatment over 12 sessions. That's not bad. 12 sessions to give you the strategies that you need to help you get over childhood traumas. Okay. So last week we talked about exposure therapy, which works best for adults as well. So now I'm introducing cognitive processing therapy, which is almost the same thing. But I'm going to pick up on this on Thursday, and we're actually going to compare the difference between exposure therapy and cognitive processing therapy. All right. So that has been it, honestly, for this evening. I want to thank you all for coming on and being a part of Counsel Today with Shanrae. This is week 2 of exposure, and I break it down to a different subtopic every week. I'll be on for the month of May and going one day, Thursday into June. Okay, so I don't see any questions or any scenarios for tonight, but let me move this along. All right, so I want y'all to see this. Oh, I had one more. I kept this from last week because I wanted y'all to see the benefits of exposure therapy. So you have habituation. So as you gradually and repeatedly expose yourself to the source of your fear, your reaction to it may decrease over time. Number 2 is extinction. Exposure therapy can offer a safe environment for you to learn that the situation that you fear do not pose a threat to you. It can help weaken your association between the situation and the negative outcome that you expect. All right, number 3 is emotional processing. This form of therapy can help you explore and understand the source of your fear. It can also help you replace your instinctive response with more realistic thoughts and beliefs about feared situations and make you more comfortable. All right, and I'm not going to read the rest because we're going to go into the rest of this on Thursday. The difference between exposure therapy and and cognitive processing therapy. All right, so let's move this along. My final thought for tonight my thoughts and my takeaway. Let me get my paper from last week so I'll be so I can read this to you all the right way. All right, my final thoughts from last week. Here we go. Okay, so exposure therapy can significantly, and I can open this up, can significantly reduce an individual's anxiety symptoms, increase a person's ability or willingness to approach uncomfortable situations, and then strengthen learning that individuals can handle hard things. And this comes from Dr. Courtney DeAngelis. This is her quote. All right, and I believe this is my website theories for those that are fellow counselors or interested. Cole says, it may be too much to explain now, but can you break down letting go? Because that is the hard part. Letting go. Let me try to answer this as quickly as possible. Let me open this up so you can see me. Letting go of something is not a magical pill. It's not going to happen overnight. You have to do it in steps and in strategies. Now it depends on what you need to let go. There's different strategies and therapies for what you need to let go, but let's talk about main things. First of all, again, you have to own up to it. What you're trying to let go, it happened. It was something that happened out of your control. It happened. Okay, you were going to try to regain control over your thought process, your mental status, and even your heart and your well-being, because we're affected. Our heart is even affected when something tragic happens to us. So you're going to have to, I would start writing things down. It's like a ladder approach. Write down whatever comes to your mind negatively. Start writing down the opposite of it. I'm going to give an example. I deserve that. You're going to write down, it's called a ladder step. You're going to start writing things down. I deserve what happened to me. Then you're going to write the opposite of that. So let me ask you, Cole, if you thinking in your mind, I deserve what happened to me, what is the opposite of I deserve what happened to me? And I'm going to wait for your answer. What is the opposite thought pattern for that? I deserved what happened to me. Okay, and some people say, well, if I was faster, or if I was smarter, this would not have happened to me. You want to write the opposite of that. I don't care if you reframe what you said. I am smart and I can overcome any negative, any negative deed that tries to overcome me. Let me see what you said. And I want you, so that's a good strategy there. It's called ladder list. Begin to write down, if you, whatever negative thoughts you may be having, write down the very opposite of those negative thoughts. Put it up where you're gonna, like, if you have to put it up on your mirror. And Cole said, I deserve to be treated well. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's it. So that's a strategy there that anyone can use in any negative situation that you have occurred. It's called ladder list. Type it out. Type it out. Write it out. Any negative thought that may come to your mind, write the very opposite. Make a list of the very opposite. And that will become your own personal affirmation. Okay, Cole's daily affirmations. You might have to look at it 3 times, 4 times a day. But the more you rehearse it, the more you do this, the more you're going to start believing it. That's just one strategy right there. It's just a general strategy that anyone can use that will help them. We all experience something. My sisters and I grew up being bullied, not only by our peers, but by adults. So we grew up, I used to walk to school. If Tawana's still on here, hey, Jamal. If Tawana Washington is still on here, she know we walk to school, and so I would have to walk to school, starting elementary, PS 105 out there for Rockaway, and it would be adults out there talking about, look at that fat so and so, look at that fat. So I was bullied. We were bullied by not only our peers, but we were bullied by adults, and so that can affect someone negatively. But I really thank God for my Christian. I thank God for my Christian upbringing, because going to church in a Christian setting, and going and hearing wonderful words of affirmation growing up, it helped counteract. It literally helped counteract all of that negative chatter that I would hear throughout the week, walking to school, walking home. So it's just a retraining of your thought process, and that's a general type of thing. A ladder list. Write your ladder list. I hope that I helped and I answered your question, Cole. Does anyone else have any other questions for this evening? And while I'm waiting, I'm going to move this along. So there's my theory references page. Okay. Oh, I can move this over here. So if there's a past counsel of the day with Shanrae series that you missed, or you just want to rewatch, you can go to my YouTube channel at Shanrae Price. Please like, share, and subscribe, and select any past series that you would like to watch. And I'm grateful that I have enough content there, and it talks about different things. And hopefully, my prayer and my goal is that it will help you. All right. So I am a professional one-on-one counselor. If you're interested in professional one-on-one counseling services, feel free to contact me via Messenger, Facebook Messenger at Shanrae Cherie Price, or my email at shanraecherieprice@gmail.com. I'm a lifestyle strategist, and my aim is to aid you in your life's goals and your life's dreams. All right, I'm going to open this up. I would like to thank you all for participating in week two, part one of exposure, violence exposure in the family. I will see you all. I'm going to see you all on Thursday evening, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 30 minutes. I'll see y'all there for part two. We're going to break it down. So glad to have y'all on tonight. I was trying to see. Thank you, Cole. I'm so glad that this was helpful for you. I'll see y'all Thursday night. Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful rest. See you Thursday. Good night, everybody.